CCU Orlando presents The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 49, You Love Yourself, 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul, Part 1. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice, and I am the host of this fun show. It's hopefully supportive of your soul journey, entertaining, and yes, fun. We love to have fun. I'm here in 818 Studios with my very curious producer.
Hey, I am Dave Croft. Hey, everybody. I hope that you are doing well today. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, friends.
Is that my thing? I just say Happy Monday. Is that like...
I like it.
Weather on the 10s and things like that.
That's exactly.
For you drive. And I recognize that it's probably not Monday that you're listening to this, although we probably have a core listener.
We do.
Core set of listeners who are listening every Monday morning. But in case it's not Monday, happy insert day of the week day.
Right. We're glad you're with us, and always we're happy to share the journey with you. And really, this show is about spiritual conversations among friends. I'm often bringing in learning that I have received from many different places, mostly my own spiritual journey over the years, but certainly I've had some wonderful, wonderful teachers, ministers, friends, coaches, even therapists, who have supported me, and we're happy to be sharing the show with you. And Dave is so important. Dave is not only the producer, he provides wonderful feedback and great questions. So I know that if you're a regular listener, you value all the work that Dave does. So I'm lifting you up today,
Thanks.
Dave.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I feel... I'm not as learned as you. I haven't gone through ministry school or anything. I mean, that having been said, I did teach for 11 years at a Christian college, in Memphis.
Right.
And so as far as like discipleship and all of that stuff and mentoring, definitely have a really solid footing in that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons we get along well. We have a lot of places we dovetail. Your current career also being in music, and my former career being in music. So there's a lot of great places where our work and our soul journeys dovetail. And I called you my curious producer. I was listening to a couple old shows, and then the one that had just come out, and I was like, wow, those are really good questions. And I think it sometimes slows me down and gives me a better pace so that our listeners can really stay with us. So,
well, I've done a lot of interviews and podcasting throughout my years of being a podcast producer and host and everything. And my whole mantra has been, ask the questions that you, the interviewer, want to know.
Yeah.
And so, when we're talking and going through things, these are things that I genuinely, hey, I wonder. It's my same DJ philosophy, play tunes that you like,
Exactly, yeah.
And so I always try to ask questions that I want to personally know the answers to.
Yes, exactly right. And I think that's good because in general, we are talking about the soul pretty much every show. It's called Experience of the Soul podcast channel. And then the show itself is The Authentic Spiritual Journey, which certainly implies we're always doing soul work, and we are. So, and the questions all of us ask are pretty innately human. Who am I? Why am I here? How do I do life better? Why do bad things happen to good people? All of that. And today's show is one I'm pretty excited about because it definitely came out of my own experience and felt like a gift from Spirit as I received these 7 signs of an evolving soul. Before we get to that, though, we want to do a shout out for a country today.
Yeah, we are shouting out to the Czech Republic.
Wow, the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. And I actually have a friend who lives in the Czech Republic. I don't know if he listens to the show, but Jan Christoph, who I met in Memphis, he came to
Yes.
Visible Music College as a student, and just an amazing guitarist, just an amazing, gentle soul. And I've spent some time in Eastern Europe, traveled to Hungary,
All right.
and have met folks from like Bulgaria and the Eastern European the culture is so rich, but not without its, without its warts and, the kind of oppressive regimes and everything.
Sure.
But they are some of the gentlest, kindest people I've ever met from Eastern Europe, and Czech Republic is no different.
I totally agree with that. And we are so happy and proud, really, that you're listening. It so touches us to know that people that far away in a completely different culture are connecting, with the work we're doing here. And it just solidifies for me what I was just saying about us being innately human. And we are always human beings, but of course we're spiritual beings as well. So we're always, it's always the finite trying to understand the infinite. And so no matter where we might find ourselves, whatever country we may be in or what country we may be from, we're always asking, the same soul questions.
That's right. The soul is the soul, no matter what language you speak.
Exactly. So, Czech Republic friends, wow, we welcome you. We bless you on the journey, and we thank you for listening. And I am actually going to take an opportunity to ask this question, and feel free to give us feedback that somebody recently said, boy, a couple of your last shows were so good, they could have gone on another 15 or 20 minutes. And they said, you could easily do an hour. I said, well, sometimes people see the time, and, that seems a little long. So give us feedback and let us know.
Yeah, you can absolutely let us know at experienceofthesoul.com/contact.
Yep.
You can let us know there, or you can let us know in the reviews. That's also a good place to put any of that feedback, because we do monitor those reviews. And if you have something good, or maybe it's a blind spot for us that we could work on, we want to know that too. But yeah, I get the feeling that we let them go for as long as I feel like they need to go. We have a break, kind of put in there. But like with Jacqueline Freeman several episodes ago, that went a little bit long.
And that was one of the ones somebody said could have gone easily 15 more minutes.
Right. Or with John Stringer,
John Stringer could have too.
And usually if they go so long, we'll actually split them up into two parts, like
That's
we did
true.
with
That's true.
Daniel Nahmod and then.
So anyway, we appreciate your feedback, and most likely we'll stay at about the same. Occasionally we'll go a little long, but always appreciate knowing and hearing what's interesting to you, and that also inspires us because it means you're connecting with what we're saying. So if I took anything away from that, it's like, please keep doing what you're doing. So thank you for that feedback.
And it's good to know if we go long, it's okay.
Yeah, right. Because you can always turn it off if you're tired of listening.
Yeah, you're like,
pause.
Done.
Yeah, done and done. So welcome to today's show. There is actually a lot to cover today. I'm saying that it might sound like I'm giving a class. This is a class for myself that you get to be in on. And I gave a message at the church several weeks ago based on these 7 signs. And so I'm doing for the very first time a 7-week series on a particular topic that means so much to me. And it is called 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul. 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul. And today I'm going to give you a little introduction about kind of just the context for some of this information. And then we're going to do part 1, which is you love yourself.
Are we going to give them all 7 signs so they maybe have kind of an idea of what they can look forward to?
Yes. Okay. So I will read all 7, and then I'm going to back way up and give an introduction about context, because I was doing some writing earlier today, and it was really given to me that this would be a helpful context. So, so the 7 signs are: number 1, you love yourself. Number 2, your heart is open and loving. Number 3, you are aware that you are one with all. Number 4, your life is meaningful and has purpose. Number 5, you identify with the soul and not the body. Number 6, you seek opportunities to be vulnerable. And number 7, you feel comfortable in the unknown.
I already know which ones are going to stretch me just looking at the list.
Yes, exactly. And that was how I knew that the message really landed with people, because I was actually kind of surprised. I mostly kind of got these lessons as a download from Spirit. And it was funny because I was on the phone with a friend when it happened, and we were talking about somebody we really love. and she has a statement, something like, your heart is open and loving. And I said, well, that goes in here. And then so the first one was, you love yourself. And then that was kind of a riff off one of hers. And then all the rest just flowed. So I had a colleague, so shout out to John McLean in Nashville for being with me as I got this. But as I gave the message, people were really focused, almost to the point where I said either they're really focused or they're really bored. I'm not sure, but it turned out really focused. And what was happening, as people came up to me later, they said, I really connected with that message because I could see, okay, yeah, I'm doing a few of these really well. There's a few I'm not maybe doing at all, and some that, it's my growing edge. And we want to keep doing that, keep bringing these things into the forefront, because we want to be evolving. We want, to grow. And so much of my ministry is based on that idea that you are a growing, evolving soul. So the context for this material is, I feel like I want to say a little bit about the difference between, well, let me say this, that the 7 things found in this series, for this, 7-part series, are virtually in every world religion that I'm aware of in terms of ideas, in terms of world religions that are based, and I'm going to be real clear how I say this, that are based in spirituality rather than religiosity. And this is not particularly true of Christianity as a whole right now, as a matter of fact. These concepts are far more Eastern in their approach. It's closer to something you would hear in Hinduism or Buddhism or anyway, a number of world religions. Now, certainly in Christianity and especially in contemplative Christianity, you would hear some of the same things. But I wanted to start with that because for some of us, this idea of soul evolution, or that we are a soul and that we have a spiritual journey, is new. So this 7-part series is not based in religiosity. It's based in spirituality. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference. So in religiosity, there's dogma, beliefs, and rules that must be followed. And I'm going to say, or else. What is the or else? Well, it depends on the religion. Usually it means you're either a heathen, you're going to die and go to hell, or you'll have to leave the church, of your choice if you are breaking any of these.
Right. Excommunicated or removed from God or whatever.
Right. And so virtually any denomination, any spiritual practice can become religious if it becomes calcified in the way it approaches the spiritual experience. But especially those religions that find themselves so wrapped in dogma that if there's a spiritual experience that doesn't fit maybe what the particular dogma or rules or beliefs are, there's several options usually. One, you're told to deny the experience, like, oh yeah, that didn't really happen, or two, we don't really know, anything about that. Or 3, maybe you belong somewhere else. This is scaring us. And I know stories where this has happened. So religiosity tends to be, in my view, very confining, very controlling, and yet at a certain time in my history, it felt safe for me to be there. So I am not demonizing religiosity, but what I'm saying is that if you're having profound spiritual experiences, you are probably going to feel this divine discontent to move out of a rigid set of dogma and beliefs, because God is bigger and your spiritual experience is bigger than any set of rules and dogma. Mm-hmm. And I would say that for myself, even as a minister of a particular faith, that my spiritual experience is even bigger than the denomination I serve, even though we're a spiritual movement, because I've experienced things on the spiritual level that cannot necessarily be explained by a belief system. They're experienced, they're known, and so in spirituality, the idea, rather than controlling and limiting, is that the emphasis is on direct experience of the divine. In other words, participating in your authentic spiritual journey and seeking to blow past your calcified beliefs. In other words, we seek experiences. If we're on the spiritual journey, if we're on the spiritual journey, we are seeking experiences past what we know. So rather than being confined to a particular dogma or belief, as a matter of fact, we say, I have believed that, and what is Spirit going to show me? In other words, God will reveal God's self, himself, herself, to me through my individual spiritual experience. And so the way we are approaching these next 7 weeks is definitely through that lens of spirituality. And again, hear me say, there's no one right spiritual practice or religion. What there is a discernment based on what my soul needs at any given moment, and then attracting to myself the spiritual path that'll support me moving forward. And it can very easily be Christianity. It could be Buddhism. It could be Hinduism. It could be even paganism. It could be Native American spirituality. I want to encourage you to if you can, consciously think about opening your heart as you're hearing some of these ideas, especially if you come from a background where there's only one way to view spirituality. I think this is an important distinction. We've talked in past shows, Dave and I both, where we came from a more traditional, each of us, from a more traditional religious background, and have each in our own ways at different times moved into a broader understanding of the divine.
Yeah, and the challenge of allowing yourself to be open to that and going against whatever heresy, blasphemy, or whatever,
Right.
that kind of your youth pastor shoulder angel is telling you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think there's comfort in things like liturgy and traditions that go along with church.
Yes, for sure. Beautiful.
Last couple of months ago, we went through Easter and the Lent season and all of that, and I think that's really good. I think where we get trapped is when that becomes the relationship, that becomes the religion, and it becomes so tight. And like just recently, I was driving around listening to I was driving someone else's car, and they had a Christian station put on, and I was listening to the songs. I didn't want to mess with their stereo because I was borrowing their car, and it was just all this things that even 10 years ago, probably not 5, but 8 years ago, I was way on board. But now I listen to it and I'm like, man, it completely bristles up against what I believe now. It was so wormy and just like, we're nothing, and that's just not who I am anymore.
Right.
And so, but that having been said, like I said, I think there's comfort in the liturgy, without it becoming the dogma.
Well, and I think there's so many different aspects of Christianity too that we're talking about, because there is this kind of dialed in, kind of hammered into the congregants' minds that where it's all about punishment rather than about grace. And Jesus's ministry was really all about grace. From the Gentile to the thief on the cross, right beside him. So there are contemplative traditions, and many of our listeners and our congregation know that I recently went to a conference with Richard Rohr, who is a a priest in the contemplative Catholic tradition. And he calls what we know now as modern Christianity is like a slaveholder religion, and it's only about punishment. And so I'm saying all of this to just wake us up to the fact and encourage my own thinking, outside of what we have been told. About God, about Jesus, about spirituality, and in fact, about our own souls, the idea that we are sinful and need to be saved, that is not a teaching in Judaism. It was not a teaching during Jesus's time. And this idea of original sin was added much later. So I want to just put that out there, that when I'm talking about being an evolving soul, these ideas are based in a oneness spirituality, that we are all one, that there is one presence, one power, God, and everything that we see and experience is a part of that.
Yeah, and if it feels uncomfortable for you, instead of shrinking away from it, push into it and allow yourself to examine it and be safe. And if you come on the other side of it and you're like, not for me, or whatever,
right? Absolutely.
That's your soul's journey, and that's okay. It's okay.
I honor that 100%. Yep. I honor that 100%. And you're right, Dave. Part of what's going to be coming through these lessons for the next 7 weeks is the amazing spiritual discipline of learning to listen to your soul. And it definitely follows our last couple shows on soul work in terms of content. And so this is building on past shows. If this is the first show you've ever heard, you might even want to go back and listen to those, because to begin to understand these lessons appropriately, you really have to understand that we are operating from the soul understanding with a spiritual basis, not from the mind and body. So that's kind of a fundamental foundation for the teachings over the next 7 weeks. So what I want to do now is go ahead and take a break, and we are going to come back with part 1 of You Love Yourself.
Yeah, if you're on board, stick around.
Stick around.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. CCU Orlando is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. Christ Church Unity is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We'd also like to extend our thanks to our sponsor patron, Aikens Counseling Center. Cassandra Aikens is a licensed mental health counselor dedicated to creating sacred space where clients can explore their own inner process in a safe, non-judgmental, and supportive environment. She works with individuals, couples, and groups who are seeking to live a more authentic life. Aikens Counseling Center is located in Winter Park, Florida, and can be found on the web at CassandraAikens.com. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
Welcome back. We hope you are still with us after that big introduction. It's a 20-minute introduction, but that's for the next 7 weeks. You're not going to get that again.
No. We have to set the stage.
You have to set the stage, yes. And I'm finding for my own journey, my own path, and also for people I serve, when I slow things down, it helps us all to apply the lessons so much more easily. And today is the most important one for me. You love yourself. You love yourself. As I have been reflecting on this whole idea, I have noticed there are not a lot of role models for self-love. And I think for most of us, we grew up certainly feeling like that love was something that was earned. You had to do right, be right, say right, respect everybody a certain way, in order to receive love. And so for so many of us, we have a tainted idea of what love even is. So you love yourself. You love yourself means that you honor your feelings, It means you honor your opinions, but you don't put them over others. You honor what you think about a certain thing, and you even know what those opinions are. So many of us are uh, uh, just simply modeling what we've heard other people say. We haven't really thought about what we think, or we haven't really delved into our personal natures enough to really know even what we like and don't like. Sometimes we don't even know how we feel. But to love yourself means that I am aware of how I feel. It means I take care of myself around my feelings. It means that I honor what my needs and desires are. And as I love myself, I can know if people around me are loving me or not, because I have a good understanding of what real love is. I love myself. I honor myself. And another aspect, I'm just wanted to give you these things to think about. Another aspect of loving yourself is just honoring the body and what the body needs. Right? So you love yourself. That's those three simple words is packed with meaning. Packed with meaning. So loving yourself is a process. It's an evolving process. And I'm not where I was a month ago on this process. And I hope in another month, I'm not where I am today. I am moving more and more into acknowledging what I need, acknowledging what Spirit is calling me to do. And so, really honoring that is part of self love. The question though that begs to be asked is, how do I do it? Right? How do I love myself? Well, it is a lifelong journey, but very, very doable. And we want to realize that there are many things impacting us loving ourselves or not. There is what we bring in our soul this lifetime from past lives, past experiences. There are childhood experiences that are often mirrors of the karma we're bringing in, and that's why we're incarnating this lifetime, because we're incarnating this lifetime to heal through and have these experiences. So everybody I've ever served in a ministry that I've had one-on-ones with always is going back to childhood with where they feel, wounds began, and the lack of self-love often comes from there. So there is probably going to be therapeutic work to be done to uncover what is blocking the self-love. And it could be a therapist, it could be a spiritual guide, but it could be there are a lot of different modalities. And again, because I know you're an evolving soul, I know that you already are probably doing or are being guided to your next phase of spiritual growth by what you're attracted to in terms of what's going to support your soul growth in this area of loving yourself. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So I belong to a local gym, and last August I started working out on a regular basis, and I even got a trainer. I thought that'd be a good idea, and I noticed that honoring my body and what it needed was a really important part of my soul growth, because I was so guided to do it. And I ran into this guy. He's actually a member of the congregation, and I ran into him at a restaurant, and I was like, great to see him and everything, and I talked to his partner, and I'd done their wedding, and I left the restaurant, and I said, I'm supposed to go back and talk to him. And so already I'm describing what the inner process is in loving yourself. It's like hearing that little voice of, hey, you should go back in. So I could have, one, ignored the voice. But what I chose to do, thank goodness, what I chose to do was go back into the restaurant and say, you know what? I have been wanting a trainer, and I wonder if you're open to, working with me. Well, that trainer led me to other things, and now I have found the practice of Tai Chi. Whoa. Now, I still work with weights. I'm still doing the rowing machine, but Tai Chi has been an incredible, incredible support for my journey. And honoring that need has been as important as the practice itself. Honoring the need for my to honor my body through exercising more, through doing a little working out, even though I was already walking and things, I just felt like I needed to do more. So all of these things, first feeling the desire, then moving ahead, and then following the next kind of little intuitions that move me forward for the next choice, all are markers of loving yourself. And now, if I could say, well, I should have done it sooner. Okay, so that is playing back to an old tape, an old way of thinking about things, when in fact, if I should have done it sooner, I probably would have. So we go from this moment, and we know that whenever I did it was the right time, because it was when I clearly heard the voice and I clearly moved forward. So loving yourself means I listen to the still voice within. I listen to the voice of my soul speaking to me. I love myself means I honor my feelings. It doesn't mean everybody around me has to do what I want. It means if I have a feeling, I honor it and I see what it has to teach me. I honor my feelings means I take responsibility for my feelings, and then I move forward. If I have a feeling of anger, I see what's there for me. I look at it, and maybe something needs to change. If I'm frustrated all the time and I'm doing nothing about it, guess what? It probably means something needs to change. And if I love myself, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that. So loving yourself is a process, and it's not a one-time event. It is listening to the voice of your soul, is honoring your feelings, is honoring your body. It is, and ultimately, when you really love yourself, of course, there's a lot more room for others as well, because you're not so busy judging them. Now, saying all that, it doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. Because when you love yourself, there are certain behaviors you probably don't want to be around because they don't feel healthy to you. And that's how you're honoring your feelings. That's how you're honoring your body.
How does self-care and those kind of things fit into the picture that we're kind of painting here today?
Well, I mean, I think self-care is in there. I had a good friend just tell me, it's so important to take care of yourself, getting good rest. I'm a big believer too in massage and, body work. If you need, even chiropractic, I'm a big fan of chiropractic and acupuncture. So all of those things are certainly in there because it's about honoring the body and what you need. I had a friend, though, years ago who was so busy running around for appointments, they never had time for other people. So that's loving yourself and excluding everyone else. And so I think self-care is in there and is an important aspect for sure. But I think everything in its right, in perfect balance.
And what would you say to somebody who's maybe listening right now and maybe they're like, I love myself. I hate myself, or if they nothing them, you know what I mean? If there's like a spectrum of self-loathing over here and I love myself over here and
well, and I think we all have moments of that. And I think if that is a predominant feeling, then I definitely think therapy is in order because there's something driving that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Or counseling with your minister or, checking in because that kind of hatred and anger turned inward can be
devastating.
Devastating. Well, and it can mean anything from stomach ulcers, high blood pressure, heart problems to suicide.
Yeah.
It can also mean, if it goes outward, emotionally, physically, hurting the people we love. So loving yourself is not only good for you, good for the planet, good for everyone. Yeah. And we're not all there. As a matter of fact, we'd be living in spiritual spiritual bypass if we were saying that, oh yes, I love myself, and then we go, do these behaviors that are awful. That's a disconnect, So I think we all want to see ourselves as, being very loving and loving ourselves and being very kind of spiritually high about that. But we're all in process of that. I mean, I certainly have moments where I'm upset or I'm angry or I cry. I mean, even I've had certainly moments of depression, and I think everyone has. But how we handle those things starts to be a great measuring stick, if you will, for where we are in our self-love journey.
Yeah, and those are almost opportunities to love yourself.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
like if we're playing like the Macho Man card, if something
Sure.
I can't cry or whatever, you want to put on that and just allowing yourself to do that,
Hmm.
and loving yourself through those
Hmm.
things that maybe you're uncomfortable doing,
Hmm.
and that could be, like I said, crying. That's just an easy kind of
Well, no, that's a
cliche
good one.
kind of thing. But even if it's like getting help,
Yes.
seeing a
Getting the help
counselor,
you need.
and kind
Hmm.
of, I know, and this is thankfully changing, but there
Mm.
used to be a real stigma to mental health, and like I
Yes, for
said, the
sure.
needle is moving on that, but
But still, in
that's
some cultures, like it's more common in white culture, but people of color have told me, "Oh no, no, we don't go to therapists because
you have to take care of your own
you
business,
take care
or
of your own business, and people think I'm not crazy, that kind of thing."
right.
And that's what people have told me, people of
Hmm.
color. So, yeah, and I you heard the page turn because I looked back, and what's so interesting about week one about you love yourself, without number one, you love yourself, none of the others are going to be possible. And what you were just talking about is number six about seeking opportunities to be vulnerable.
Hmm.
When you love yourself, you're comfortable in your vulnerability. So, if someone's going on the attack all the time, it's a great indicator that they don't love themselves, that they're in self-hatred. And it's a great tool for us. Of course, if we're there, we don't really care about it. we don't
Yeah, and it's
really,
hard to
it's
see
hard to see
if you're on the
yourself.
receiving end of that. It's kind of hard. Oh,
Yes.
they're just not loving themselves right now, and their verbal abuse of me.
Yes.
That's tough to kind
Yes,
of
that
parse
is tough
out.
to see, right? Well, as a minister, I have a lot of practice with that. So years ago, I had there was a special meeting. There was a something in the church where uh, I was an associate minister at the church, and there had been there had been a financial decline over time, and so we kind of sent out a letter. Houston, we have a problem, and so there was a big congregational meeting, and so I was one of the scribes in front with a whiteboard, just supporting the senior minister and executive director and all that. There were a couple of the associate ministers doing that, and people were really irate and infuriated, and they had a right to be. There was stuff going on they didn't know about, and so anyway, somebody was just yelling at me up there, and I said, "Let me make sure I have this right," and I repeated it in a real calm way, and one of our members came up to me afterward and said, "How do you do that?" And I said, "Well, it's very difficult, but I know I can see that they're very upset. And the truth is, I honor it because they're upset because they care so much about the place." So I said, "I really honor it." And she goes, "I could never just hold my cool, with somebody yelling at me." And I said, "Just watch, Grasshopper. It's part of ministry, and I have to do it. If I
Yeah.
start yelling back, man, it's over."
And it's part of ministry. It's part of being a teacher. As a
It
teacher, I
is.
get
It's
that
part of
kind
being a
of thing. I've
teacher.
had a student who took a picture of one of my teaching assistants.
Oh yeah.
Took a picture of him in the middle of class and wrote "dead inside." Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid is
This is
trashing on social media, like posted up to Instagram. And so we asked the kid, and he's like, no, this wasn't about the teacher. This was about my complete feeling as a failure as an artist. I'm a complete failure. And so it was all
wow.
about him, and him just like, I am dead inside. I'm in
Right.
class, and I'm going to fail at this. And so
Yes.
instead of, I mean, my assistant was ready to like just nail him on this, and we had a whole process to go through. And I said, well, before we do that, let me just ask him. This is what I saw.
Yep.
This is what it looks like.
Yes. Yeah. Help me out.
You tell me what your intent was. And he just like was ashen. He's like, no way. And he's a military student as well. So he's a vet. And
well, and I mean, and you brought up something important, several important things. One is social media tends to be kind of just our shadow stuff anyway. And so anytime something is directed outward in anger, it's ultimately anger at the self. I mean, we all have injustices, right? That we all are outraged about. Kids should not be killed going to school. Babies should not be kidnapped. I mean, we can all agree those are injustices, and of course that brings anger in any of us. But when we're projecting anger outwards, even if it had been about the teacher, it ultimately was about him anyway.
That's right.
Because all we see is a projection of ourselves, and the soul is so wise that it is trying to throw the image out in front to see itself, so that it can heal and become whole again. So all of these practices we're talking about, looking at behaviors, and let me be clear, looking at our own behaviors, because as soon as we start telling other people what their behaviors are and what they mean, we are the ones in projection, and we are the ones really not working the journey as we need to be, because the journey and the focus always needs to be back on the self. And the questions I like to ask myself are, why is this happening for me right now? Like, why is this up for me to look at? Why is this up for me to deal with? Is there something for me to heal? How does this relate to my spiritual journey, rather than I'm a victim, or I hate this, or what the bleep is wrong with them, which of course is a human reaction, but we don't want to stay there. Okay, so if we're having reactions like that, we go, okay, what is this about? So if we are feeling physically violated, well, of course, then we have a response to that. And then we make a new choice. If we're feeling, emotionally violated, all right, well, that makes sense. But if we're just not able to sit with what's happening, and we're projecting anger everywhere, that's something to look at too. So, an internal reaction doesn't mean we're wrong, and that's what loving ourselves is about, is just calming it down, looking at what's happening, and saying, wow, I am having a big reaction. What is this about? What is here for me? And that is a wonderful example of loving yourself. I'm going to go a little longer on this
Sure.
on this topic, because there was a book that helped me many years ago, and it's really hard to get, but then, or it has been really hard to get, and I think now there might be a new edition. It's called Learning to Love Yourself. It's an old book written by a PhD therapist, Gay Hendrickson, I believe.
Yeah, I'll find it and have it in the show notes.
But it's called Learning to Love Yourself. And there's a very, very simple practice, and I want to leave this with you, because it was super, super helpful for me, and continues to be. If I'm in a tough time, or working with something, so if I'm feeling sad, rather than making that sad wrong, I say, and I got it from this book, I love the part of me that feels sad. If I feel angry, rather than acting out and arguing, I want to ask myself, or say to myself, I love the part of me that feels mad. I love the part of me that just acted out because I couldn't control my mad. And when I was first doing it, I said, I love the part of me that feels ashamed. I was feeling a lot of shame. I love the part of me that feels ashamed. And then I said, I don't know if I can do that. And so I said, I love the part of me that doesn't want to let me love it. That was big. And so from there, it opened a little bit. It opened just a little bit. And I said, well, if I can love that, maybe I can even love the part of me that feels ashamed. So loving yourself is an ever-evolving process of the soul. Loving yourself means you listen to the inner voice of spirit. It means you pay attention to your feelings. It means you listen to your body, you honor your feelings, you honor your body, you honor your needs. As Dave said, you do self-care, you take care of the things you need to do to go do your work in the world. And then when you get off track, rather than shaming yourself, bring back that little affirmation. I love the part of me that. And if you want to read that book, it's very, very readable. If you can get a hold of it, Learning to Love Yourself. I promise it'll support you on the journey.
It reminds me of when Jacqueline Freeman, a few episodes ago, talked about, if something happened in the hive,
yes,
you just got to it. They didn't lament the fact that the honeycomb had broken. They just went to it.
Yeah, so let's clean it up.
Yeah, just clean it up right away.
Yeah. And remember, if you're in blaming, self-blame, or blaming others, ultimately you're not in love, right? So all that stems from us not loving ourselves fully. So I don't know a single person, though, on the planet that loves himself completely. We're all evolving in this. And again, it's what I believe we're here to do, learn to love ourselves. As we do that, there's more for everyone. We're clear about energies we do or don't want in our lives. We can be about the work we're supposed to be about, helping the world. And then even in times, if we separated ourselves from people, we still love them, support them from afar, and do what's ours to do. So I love the part of me that is going to be a really great statement, I think, for you to take into your spiritual practice. So we are, as always, so grateful you joined us today. This show was part 1 of 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul. Number 1, you love yourself. And this is our goal for you, friends. We hope you take some of these lessons, these teachings, share them with your friends, talk about them, and you'll be amazed that you will be lifted and inspired as you hear other people working with the same things, because we're all in this together. So thank you again for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Portland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, and J.J. Hamilton, along with our partner patrons, CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. You can learn more about supporting the channel, along with show notes and information about our other programs at experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2019, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.